The last part of our morning is a panel with three people who have worked closely together for a number of years. Bruce Peterson is a judge for Hennepin County, Minnesota. He's currently assigned to the civil and criminal divisions, but in 2010, he was part of a team of partners who created the CoParent Court, the country's first problem-solving court in the family court arena. Also in front are Maisha Giles and Rose McCullough, who are both co-parent court navigators at North Point Health and Wellness Center. So I'd like to welcome them.
Thank you, Judy. And I want to thank the Extension Service for putting on this program. I'm feeling a lot of synergy here today because our project was really based on the work of Kathy Eden. In fact, she was kind enough to brainstorm with us in the early days and about how to put this project together. And she was the one who said we really needed to have a randomized control group, which caused us enormous amounts of expense and aggravation, but turned out to be very much worth it. So thank you for your help on this, Kathy. And I haven't met Dr. McHale before, but I can see a lot of parallels in his work and ours. We're both trying to take the basic information Kathy has developed and put it into practice on the ground and make something of it. You have a final product called a shared plan. We call ours a parenting plan. We're doing many of the same things in a different way. And I also want to thank the people who are here today and your work in this field. I can't think of anything more important than to improve the health and stability of our families. As a judge, I unfortunately see every day in my courtrooms what happens when people don't get the kind of nurturing and beneficial co-parenting that we're talking about. So thank you for the work that you're doing. So Co-Parent Court was a demonstration project funded by federal and foundation funds that for 3 years, from 2010 to 2013, worked with low-income unmarried parents here in Minneapolis. The basic model was kind of grafted onto the child support system. Kathy mentioned that we look at fathers in the court system, at least, as primarily a checkbook. Congratulations, you're the father, here's your child support award. We took that basic, what we call paternity calendar, and added on a series of services to it to see if we could support the co-parenting and also social service needs of the parents involved, and then culminating in helping them produce a parenting plan that we were trying to see if that would transcend some of the fall off and deterioration of the relationship that Kathy's been talking about. I want to say there's a lot of other people here in this room who know a lot about Co-Parent Court. Karen Shire, you've heard, developed the basic curriculum for unmarried parents, Together We Can, which we used. We sought her out early on in our explorations to find the right materials. Krista Anders over here for many years was our project manager who put untold thousands of hours into developing and managing this project. Rose Allen and Kirsty Olson from Extension helped with turning the Together We Can curriculum into a workable format with our parents. Mary Marzak bugged us endlessly as our principal evaluator, and she's responsible for some of the evaluation results I'm going to tell you about. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the purpose, why we did this, and I think it's probably obvious to a lot of you in this audience. I'll go through that quickly. Why we did this, what we did, what our structure was, and what some of the results were. And then Rose and Maisha are going to talk more about their working directly with the parents and some of the opportunities and challenges that they saw there. So let me move quickly through some of this basic background material. Why is co-parenting beneficial? I call these first three reasons kind of the united front. Parents agree on the rules and support each other's decisions. Children learn parental authority is not arbitrary. Children are not subjected to inconsistent discipline. I call the next two see and learn. Children internalize social norms and moral values. Children observe the modeling of interpersonal skills like communication, respect, and compromise. And the final one is simply a fact of life. Kathy knows all about this. It's very difficult for non-resident fathers to maintain extensive involvement if they don't have a parenting relationship with the mother. I wanted to say just a word about the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. Do many of you know about that? Is that common in your field? Okay, well, you're going to learn just a little bit quickly. We could spend a whole day on it. It really captures the significance of the work we're all doing. In the 1990s, the late 1990s, the Centers for Disease Control, together with Kaiser Permanente Health Management Plan in California, interviewed like 17,000 adults and compared their current adult health issues with adverse childhood experiences they had as children, and found incredible correlations between simply the number of adverse experiences and a whole range of adult outcomes. Now, what's interesting is, what are the adverse childhood experiences that were selected out as very closely associated with adverse health outcomes? The things you might imagine: emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, physical neglect. Those are the first 5. The next 4, mother treated violently in the home. These are household effects. Now, household substance abuse, household mental illness, incarcerated household member. What is number 10? Parental separation or divorce. So parental separation or divorce, and in our project we worked exclusively with non-residential unmarried parents, is an adverse childhood experience that is rated in the associations with health effects, together with abuse and neglect of the more traditional kind. Now, I had several slides here about the health effects. I don't want to spend a lot of time. There's direct correlation between increased ACE scores and these increased risks. And I think I'm just going to tell you some of the more striking ones. For an ACE score of greater than 4, an individual has 5 times the likelihood of sexual intercourse by age 15, 5 times the chance of becoming an alcoholic, 7 times likely to commit domestic violence. An ACE score of greater than 6 produces a 20 years loss in life expectancy. So we're talking about very significant adult health effects from adverse childhood experiences, one of which is parents living apart. Another way to bring home the significance of what we're all doing here, I just picked out 2 variables that change the trajectory of a young person's life that I see all the time in court: dropping out of high school or a teenage pregnancy. Many young people overcome these challenges, do just fine with them, but it is a struggle for everybody who experiences this. Continually married parents can expect that 13% of their children will drop out of high school, 11% of their daughters will have a teenage pregnancy. You can see the rate is much higher for divorced parents and much higher yet for never married parents, 37%. So the very fact of being in a family with never married parents creates substantial risk factors for children. You know about all this. Minnesota, the rates of unmarried parenting are slightly less, about 41 or 42% nationally. Now, Kathy mentioned this too. The significant thing about unmarried parenting, it is not a cross-section. It is heavily concentrated in otherwise disadvantaged groups. You can see this is, this is in Hennepin County, and Dr. McHale mentioned some of this too in Florida. 84%, 89% Native American mothers and U.S.-born first-time African-American mothers, children born to unmarried parents. Actually interesting, those are U.S.-born. The rates in Hennepin County for Somalian and other African-born mothers are quite different. Kathy mentioned the chances of a college-educated woman having an unmarried parent, being an unmarried parent of 5%. Our chart here is 1 day of college. Some college, it's 15%. 1 day of college is 15%. High school degree is 68%. So the point is that the burdens of being a child in an unmarried family are all the things that, you know, the ACEs and things we've talked about, but they're also the burdens that go along with poverty and living in a culturally or economically disadvantaged family. Kathy talked about some of this too. By definition, we were dealing with unmarried parents who are not married, so at birth, none are married, but you can see the 82% cohabitating or romantically involved, and the great fall off that's the relationships Kathy's talking about. They're not real relationships. By age 5, 42% have no contact. So the motivation for us is, could we do something at the point when we have both parents in court with the paternity establishment to transcend some of the fall off that's occurring here, which also is reflected in what happens with the children. You can see age 1, 62 and 26, 88%, there's a lot of contact, but by age 5, 37% of children have no contact whatsoever with their fathers. So our mission was to create a model for paternity establishment that supports co-parenting to improve the social, emotional, and financial outcomes for children, families, and community. Since we're dealing with paternity calendars, we're dealing by definition with families that are receiving public assistance. I just want to affirm that not only were the statistics that unmarried parenting is concentrated in lower socioeconomic groups, our groups in particular were receiving welfare, our parents. Our project elements, intake assessment at the initial court hearing. Jamie mentioned the need to be concerned about putting people together. We had domestic violence screening at several steps. Maisha was called a family court navigator, so she's going to tell you about that role. Then the use of the Together We Can curriculum, which we've heard about here, originally developed by Karen and modified by the Extension Service for us. Special tracks for domestic abuse issues. Now, it was very clear to us from research we did early on that we could not focus simply on co-parenting if people didn't have basic social service needs met. Housing, food, health care. So we had separate referral tracks for people who needed social services, and Rose was the family facilitator for the mothers, and she's going to talk to you about how she was able to engage women and meet those needs. Fathers went in another direction, but a similar process of social service referrals. And then the parenting plan. Can we develop a document that the parents work on together? Unlike Jamie's situation, this was a legal document. I signed all of them. That would provide a vehicle for the couples to intentionally form a family unit with a plan for the future. Participant profile is what you'd expect. Predominantly African American, highly unemployed, fairly educated. Most never been married, but like you've heard here, most had children majority have had children with other parents, with other partners. We did have a video of parents saying wonderful things about this, which we didn't have time to show, so I'll just read you one quote, carefully selected by us. I just want to say thank you to you guys. Co-Parent Court changed my life. It changed everything for me. Without this program, my life would be very different. We could produce many, many quotes and video statements like that. The parents love this program. He said that Co-Parent Court has helped him become the dad that he always wanted to be, and now he wants to take the classes again with his youngest child's mother. Okay, so Co-Parent Court applied to multiple partner fertility. Okay, so this is Mary Marzak's report. I should get her up here. Everything I say now are things that she developed. We had a we had a one-for-one, well, we tried to make it one-for-one, a randomized control situation. We had our study groups in North Minneapolis, study zones. One case would come to us, one case would come to a control group. Mary measured the differences. Here's some of the results. This is what I just told you, randomly assigned with pre-surveys, post-surveys, and follow-up surveys. Now this is interesting. When we started this project, I had two principal concerns coming out of Kathy's work to some extent. One is that the parents would be so contentious that we wouldn't be able to we'd get bogged down in conflict and wouldn't be able to get them to agree on anything. And the other thing, frankly, having had a lot of experience in court, is they just wouldn't show up. We'd be spending all our time trying to haul people into classes and program events. Neither of those was true at all. We worked with 458 people, so 230 couples. Some blew us off, 15%. There was no coercion involved here. I did tell people, we expect you to go to these classes. If they didn't go, we'd encourage them a little bit. There was no legal coercion of any kind employed. 85% attended at least one class, and of those, you see almost all of them completed the classes. By the way, we considered 3 of the 4 classes to be completion. So of the people who went to at one class, what is that, like 80% completed the classes, and of those, look at those numbers, another 80% completed a parenting plan. That's similar to what Jamie was telling you. Once they went, they kept at it, and they liked it, they followed through to completion. Child support, there was a modest increase in the intervention group from the control group, but a very substantial increase for parents who completed the interventions, as you might imagine. Parent involvement, Kathy could have written this from her anecdotes. Interviews with parents indicate that overall unmarried parents have a strong desire to be involved in the lives of their children. So we're starting out with a fundamental motivation and desire for people to be involved. 63% of the intervention mothers reported experiencing a positive change in the co-parenting relationship, as opposed to 36% of the control mothers. So the mothers viewed this process as producing a better relationship with practical results. 59 hours a month increase in average visitation versus 24 hours for couples that didn't go through the intervention. Fathers had a similar view. 69% said there was a change in the positive direction. Now, Mary Marzak continually emphasized this to us, is that in all the interviews, there was this sense of optimism that came through from the fathers. That fathers have been so, well, Kathy read you the quotes, they've been so disrespected and marginalized in so many ways. The legal system, as Jamie said, my fellow judge in Florida, concerned about child support, they haven't been made to feel like full partners in the parenting, in the business of parenting. And to recognize them and give them a chance created a real sense of optimism. Biggest surprise was now this is, I think, both control and non-control intervention interviews, positive and respectful emotionality between co-parents. They spoke with empathy, compassion, and respect for each other. Even when they weren't working together, they did respect and value each other. This theme for wanting more support for fathers to be engaged was repeated by multiple mothers, both in control and in intervention. Okay, that's why we did it, basically what we did and some of the results. And now Maisha is going to talk about the workshops and the parenting plans.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. It's so good to see those quotes up there. I actually haven't been a co-parent court navigator for a little over a year, but still very, I'm right in the office right next to Rose, so I see her all the time. And I'm actually looking at those quotes, and I remember one dad in particular has said, it didn't really do much for me. It just really taught me how to work with the parent a little better and communicate. So it's so funny. I have a co-navigator when I was doing it, John Jackson. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today. And it's kind of a small reunion in here. It's really good to see everybody, Krista, Rose Allen, Kirsty, so that's good as well. And I truly believe, I'm going to get to this as well, but I truly believe that it wasn't just the intervention that we provided the parents, but it was just the dedication and the commitment behind the team. We were a very problem-solving team, so definitely that was a special experience for us. So, yeah, so the classes were gender-specific. We did 4 classes for 3 hours at a time. And that gave us, not only did it provide a convenience for the parents, transportation, trying to find childcare for each class, we actually started out with 6 2-hour classes. And what we found when we were doing those that way is that we, first of all, was trying to get the parents there 6 times, so that was an issue. And then also, we wasn't able to really get into in-depth discussions and conversations about co-parenting. By the time we did check-ins and everything, it would be kind of time to wrap up. So early on, we made that change. Usually our groups were between 5 and 9 participants, and that gave us a good group cohesiveness. You know, it was really a pretty intimate group. By the time some of the classes were finished, parents were exchanging numbers, looking for each other for supports, finding rides to workshops together. So it's really special in that kind of way. We didn't really like to get the workshops too big, just so we wouldn't feel a disconnect amongst the parents, because it really was the parents in the workshop that really they were learning from, and what made the workshop so special and why they kept on returning. Like I said, John was my co-navigator, so it was a gender balance, it was female-male team of co-facilitators, and it was important that we provided both perspectives to parents. And also, parents sometimes will gravitate from their, histories of trauma or just their personal experience to a male or female. So it was important for us that they had, hopefully both of us, but at least one of us that they felt like they could connect with. So overview of the workshops. First and foremost, we needed to provide we needed to build a relationship with parents. We was taking a seat in their life, and so we needed to pay special attention that we was building that rapport, that we got their attention, that we were able to meet them where they were at. We didn't come in with our agenda, we came in with their agenda. We started where they were at. That was important for us. We always address safety and healthy in the first workshop, but other ones going on. They knew that they were there for co-parenting, but we also wanted them to know that it was important to us that your safety and your health of you and your child is just as important. So if there is ever a safety concern, talk to us. We don't know unless you talk to us, though. And then, of course, the workshops were to target co-parenting skills. Obviously, we would try to avoid, getting into therapy sessions. This wasn't a group therapy. It was a therapeutic environment, but trying to kind of avoid, turn into a group therapy session. We really was targeting skills and kind of reviving hope. We heard earlier that, these parents had hope at some point. They lost it, so it was our job to kind of instill and kind of revive the hope that they once had, and give them a new paradigm as well, They had came to terms with, I'm probably going to be a single mother, or I probably will be a father that's not involved in my child's life. Not happy about the situation, but that was their reality. So, allowing them to find that new paradigm as well. Deal with the issues parents bring to class. Every workshop we would start off with maybe a 10-minute check-in, just because I said, but we work with parents that live in crisis mode. So if you're worried about where you're going to be that night, it's not really helpful for us to talk about communication at that point. So we would definitely, and some of these parents, this was the first time where they had a safe environment, an audience that they could talk to about these things. So it's very important that we allow them to kind of vent and get that out. And then also it helped with that going off into this or going off into that while we were there to talk about co-parenting and skills. If we addressed it early on, again, starting with their agenda and then moving into ours. And then obviously, part of my job as a navigator was just to listen for referrals that may need to be made. Because, we did an intake at the beginning, and sometimes they would identify, I need housing or education, but as they were talking, we would listen and we would pick up things. So we would follow up with them after class. I heard you mention this. This is what we can offer you. This is what we have available for you. Is that something you would be interested in? So like I said, we had the 4 sessions. And the first one was just kind of building a working definition. I don't know how many parents told me, I don't need a parenting class. Because we said co-parenting, they took the co right off of that and just heard parenting. And especially the mothers, because this is the one thing they felt they have done well at. They are good. If I have done nothing else, I could have disappointed people. I could have dropped out of high school, maybe can't hold down a job, maybe got pregnant at an early age. But one thing I do well is I take care of my children. So we had to be careful about our language. We're talking about co-parenting. Obviously, we're going to talk about parenting. There's definitely some overlap, but this is a co-parenting class. This is about getting you the help and the support that you need and you deserve. And so we did that, working definition. And then we let's start rethinking, your child's life. Let's start rethinking your life. Let's start thinking about the possibilities. So rethinking what the future's life could look like, rethinking what, that you once thought you could have, that maybe you can still have, and these are some ways that you may be able to get it. And just getting to know each other. We didn't do a lot of handouts and stuff in the work session. We did a lot of group discussion. We forced the parents to kind of talk and get to know each other versus just kind of, pen to paper. Session 2 was more about building a strong co-parenting relationship. So this is where we talked about the various types of relationship. Everybody's co-relationships aren't going to look the same. They're going to be different. What type of relationship do you think you want? And by the way, parents were obviously going through separately, but the idea was for them to go through concurrently. So on Tuesday nights, we would hit the fathers. On Wednesdays night, we would hit the mothers with the same information. So as they were talking, which oftentimes they did, they would have heard the same information that week. So that was really part of it too. Session 3, we partnered with some domestic violence agencies, and they would come in, and ultimately it actually ended up being Rose, but early on, and then Rose would come in and they would talk about healthy relationships. And this was a time where John and I would step out the room and they would have this discussion, just because we're working with mothers and fathers, so that trust issue comes up and they may not say anything. So they would reveal a lot of things to Rose or to the advocate that came in, and we try to stay away from the word domestic violence, because I'm not going to be a domestic violence victim too. And again, this was that listening thing. So, he got so mad that he threw the phone through the wall. So we talked about healthy relationships, and it was received a lot better that way. Obviously, we would talk about communication and conflict through communication. We've had some parents come through, they're very good communicators, they just could not communicate with each other. So how are you communicating when you get into conflict? So that's what we would spend a lot of time talking about. Then child support. We would actually have a child support officer, not necessarily their child support officer, but a child support officer come in and just do a kind of Q&A about child support, things you need to know, things you need to look out for. And that was kind of building that relationship. A lot of fathers, they won't call their child support officer, or a lot of mothers don't either, or they think it's the mom's child support officer. So this is your child support worker, and just answering some of those questions that they may not want to ask to their own child support worker. And then obviously after child support, there's some pretty long faces in the room, because we really realize, what this means and how am I going to get this, and there's a lot of fear. So then we talk about budgeting, budgeting so you can provide what you need. For how much does it cost? I mean, some of the questions we got, like, so it really costs money to have a baby in the hospital? Yes, it does, and this is how much. So kind of that reality check, and maybe you thought that $100 payment or that $50 payment was a big deal, and I get that it is to you, but it's so much bigger than that. It's so much more bigger than that. So we would talk about that. And then obviously, and one thing that I didn't say is we talked about the parenting plan, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, from the very first session. We worked up to it. And that's something that we changed throughout, because we wanted them to know that the parenting plan was a thing we want you to take. We want you to take away the skills and the services, but we want you to walk away with a plan. We're planting seeds, and the real work starts when you leave here. So we will always talk about the parenting plan and incorporate elements of the parenting plans throughout each and every workshop. So by the time they got to the parenting plan, it wasn't a foreign document to them. We also, so the fourth session was actually spent mostly 75% on the parenting plan. We would get a working copy of the parenting plan. We would be available to answer questions, but also in that fourth session, we would talk about gatekeeping. And we actually called it controlling your child's environment, justified reasons and unjustified. And those reasons that are unjustified, what needs to happen for you to feel comfortable? What needs to happen, you know? And then obviously talked more about, so let's revisit what you talked about in the first session. Let's talk about what you envision. What does your future look like? Some of the issues that we seem to see ongoing throughout the 3+ years, and Rose actually probably still sees them, is the mistrust. Obviously, we work with a population that there's historically a lot of mistrust, not only for the courts. So we would meet these parents down in court. So imagine some of our conversations. We want to have the workshops in the court. So, you know, guards were let down once we got to the community organization where we would have UROC, where we would have the workshops, but mistrust for the courts. So we were battling with that, but also mistrust for the other parent. And either it was, he's a really good person, but I won't ever trust him to change my baby's diaper. So sometimes it was the competence of the other parents, and sometimes it was the character of the other parents. No, he has kids and he takes care of them, or she takes care of her kids, but it's her character. She hasn't shown me that she's a good person or he's a good person. I don't trust the character, so we're battling those two things. Multiple partner fertility. I think this was a nightmare for Mary and her evaluation team. Sometimes we would have a dad with 2 other mothers, a mom with 3 other fathers. One time we had both parents had other partners in the program, and you know, for John and I, it wasn't such a big deal, but it was so it's like, well, with this parent I'm this way, and with this parent I'm another way, and trying to balance and have answers for this parent could get kind of confusing. And then obviously we would deal with gatekeeping, just parents that came off just not wanting to let go of some of their power, but beyond all that, just the fear, because it's like, so you're telling me that my child's going to have to go with him for a weekend, so we would just always do it baby steps. Or when we start talking about, physical or legal custody and trying to explain that to them, it's really just providing them an explanation so they start seeing things a little different. Current challenges, attendance. Obviously, our parents sometimes are living week to week. We live with, highly mobile and homeless population, so phones are getting cut off, just getting them there, trying to problem solve with them to how are you going to get to this workshop. Even though it was 4 weeks, 4 weeks was a huge commitment for some of our parents. Scheduling conflicts with work and school, which is, we actually, and Rose remembers this, we started doing our workshops during the day, and we had to switch them in the evenings, which posed more different, but some of the same problems, but attendance was an ongoing thing. Or scheduling conflicts with work and school. Then we seen a lot of untreated, mental health issues and addiction. So again, that's where those wraparound services that we were able to connect them with, our partners really came in handy and was really helpful with. So some of our suggestions on what we've seen over the years we were doing is we always provided a light meal. We provided childcare, provided and paid for childcare. Transportation. Sometimes it was bus tokens, bus cards, and sometimes it was taxi. We're not going to ask a mom with a newborn baby to catch 2 buses to get in our workshop in the middle of winter, but we will provide you a cab. Early communication. Our workshops started, they were 4 weeks. I might enroll somebody and they may have to wait 5 weeks. So it was my job, John's job, and Rose's job to keep in touch with that parent, because there's no telling where they will be in 5 weeks or what type of phone, so we will keep in touch with them. So that was important. Care calls. Hey, just checking in. You remember about the workshop this week? Okay, you need anything? You got your ride there? You got your sitter in place? Just covering our bases. And then frequent breaks, not only frequent breaks because we only could take in so much, but also to give them a time to wrap back around and check in with the navigators about things that they want to check in right now, because at the end of class, they may have changed their mind. I was going to tell you about this situation, but no, I'm ready to go home now. So we would have frequent breaks just so they can kind of check in with us as well.
Should we let Rose talk and put the parenting plans in
for sure. Yep,
You're watching our time, aren't you?
I am, but don't worry about it.
Okay.
You want me to continue?
Yeah, go.
Okay. So the parenting plan, so the judge spoke about this. It's a document created by co-parents and recognized and adopted by the court as a court order. So this will really get parents excited. So this is going to become a court order. And so that was part of also taking back their power and not feeling like the courts were going to make decisions. They didn't always see the sense, and frankly, I don't always see the sense in somebody who doesn't know your struggle, doesn't know your day-to-day life, what works for you, making decisions that you have to live with going forward. So this really got parents excited. These were completed after they had completed the workshop. We wanted to provide them the new learnings, the skills, the new awareness, so that when they sat down to do this parenting plan, they would be able to bring this information with them. And like I said, that fourth session was a working session. You had your working copy of your parenting plan to bring to your parenting plan session with you. That's just a front copy. This is just some sample sections. It had table of contents, cooperation, medical care. It had vacations, parenting schedule. It had all types of things. I think it's available somewhere. I'm not sure where, but it was what, about 20 pages, Rose? About 25 pages. So it was pretty comprehensive. And although it was comprehensive, as you see on the next slide down, if you, we made it so it was an 8th grade reading level, a lot of graphics, a lot of examples, so very user-friendly, and we were there to assist them. There was actually a graduated system of support for parents to complete the parenting plans. Parents could complete it without assistance, so those parents who had a co-parent relationship where they felt like they could take the parenting plan that they completed in class and find a time to meet up outside of the workshops and do it, we encouraged them and supported them and show up back up to court at their final hearing with that parenting plan. Other parents, they thought they could do it, but they just wanted myself or John or both of us to kind of sit and with them reiterate some of the concepts that were brought up in class. So we provided a space and, jumped in when needed or try to clarify some things for them, but they did the work still. They did the work. We just were there to kind of witness the work. And then other parents who were more conflicted either had the option to use the Legal Rights Center, who was one of our partners, or they would sit down with Rose, who was one of our mediators as well, and they would complete it. So that's it.
Well, hi everyone. So my part of being a co-parent, first of all, let me just say I feel like co-parent is my baby too. I've been with co-parent since the beginning in 2010 when it started. So for me, I'm very intimately involved with the program. And I am a mother's, the advocate for the moms in the program. And let me see. Down? Okay, here we are. So this page talks about year 3 of the report and some of the intakes, the services that were provided. And as you see that education and employment and housing was like some of the bigger issues that mothers have to deal with. And so on that, I use the resources that I have to help mothers through that process, because they come in and they, if your basic needs are not being met, then, it's hard for me to talk to you about co-parenting if you're hungry and if you don't have a place to stay. So we try to meet those basic needs through the social services that are provided for the mothers. So in the beginning of co-parent, this number is kind of outdated, as you would know, but we started with 51 moms, and that was a lot of mothers. And it was totally awesome. I mean, we had moms that came in and they did not have a clue about what was going to happen to them. All they could think of is that here comes this man again wanting to be a part of our life, disrupting what we already have in place. So just the fact that so many came in and decided that they would give it a try was really nice. So what has been successful is being available and accessible. I didn't want co-parent court to be just another one of those programs. You know, one of those programs that people sign up for and then it takes 30 calls to get a call back. So being accessible and being available was really important to me. In so much that one of my moms had been working all day, and she had 2 children, and she worked the late shift from 3 to 11. And so the daycare that her children were in is a 24-hour facility, so that worked out for her. But on this particular winter day, after she got off work, she got home and realized that her gas was off. And we're talking Minnesota, December. And she realized her gas was off, and the first thing she did was pick up her phone and call me. So at 11:45, 12 o'clock, I got a call stating that, Rose, my house is cold. I have no gas. So I nudged, oh hubby, get on up. We got somewhere to go. So we found the nearest Walmart, and we went to get her heater so that she could put in one room so that they all can gather at least in one room for the night, and we'll work on this gas thing tomorrow morning. But being available and accessible is what is important. Having good resources at hand. North Point Health and Wellness is an awesome place. If you have not been there before, take a tour and come over. We have a lot of services right there on campus. Not only the human services building, but also across the campus, we have the clinic, we have mental health, dentist office, a lot of resources at North Point. So having those good resources at hand also helps the moms. Developing a relationship with the mothers, you know, those one-on-ones, several of them. For me, it's getting to know her as a person. It's not just, here's some more services, come on in for this workshop. But for me, it was more of, who are you? What is your story? How can I help you along in this process? It wasn't about just coming to the workshop and getting a gift card at the end of the day if you need something. I wanted to know who she was. What is her story? What is she all about? How did you even get to this place? So these are things that I talk with about the moms. We meet all over Minnesota. It's cold outside. They have children. I would rather get up and go to them or meet them somewhere that is comfortable for them, or for them to have to come all the way to Minneapolis to meet me. So we have met in coffee shops, and I don't drink coffee. But I'll go to Caribou, Starbucks. We've been to restaurants, Rudolph's. I've done parenting plans in Rudolph's. They just kept bringing us the water and the soda. But, you know, wherever it took to get the services and get what they need. So providing supportive services, as you say, gift cards, transportation when needed, and more than anything, an ear to listen. Someone they can tell, they can talk to. You know, some say, well, you're my personal therapist. I'm like, no, but if it works for you, you know, I'm not your therapist, but, you know, I'm here to listen, you know, and sometimes it's just that listening ear that will help. Some of the challenges for the moms was also housing, as I stated before. Housing is so limited, and then by them being the only one, sometimes with the financial support, they don't have the money that they need to continue housing, and they have UDs they may have. And so housing is a really big issue. Finding employment, in North Point, we have employment services, so we offer employment and reliable daycare. That is a huge problem. Reliable daycare, because I found that a lot of mothers did not trust anyone with their children. So, you know, employment and reliable daycare and employment goes hand in hand. Without daycare, you really can't have reliable daycare, you really can't keep employment. So that went hand in hand. Relationship with the non-custodial parent after workshops are complete. So going forward, after we've done all the workshops, after we've taught and talked and chatted about everything, they have to continue. Now we're working to have this relationship with the father of their children. And what I use in the workshops now, my job has changed at least 6 or 7 times since I started here with CoParent, but now we use the business-like manner, business form of relationship when it comes to mom and dad. I'm like, you are no longer in an intimate relationship. We're going to look at it as a business relationship. And business partners may not even like each other all the time, but for the sake of the business to succeed, they're going to try. And the business is the child. So I'm often telling them, look at this as a business relationship. No more an intimate relationship, but a business relationship. Let's see. So my challenges, most of the time, is just keeping up with the addresses and the phone numbers. And as Maisha said, we're working with a highly mobile population. But the one thing I've learned over the years is when you have shown people that you care, they know where to find you. They'll know, they will hunt you down. They know where to find you. So just, keeping up with the address and phone numbers is a challenge, but at the same time, they know they're going to find me at North Point Health and Wellness, and somebody knows who Rose McCullough is. So somehow, I might get a message in my box or on the phone or as soon as I walk in. But, just knowing that someone is there and that we care about them matters a lot. I've learned that throughout this process that authenticity is huge. People know when you care about them. They know when you are just talking, and they know when you truly do care. So I'm gonna leave you with this story that I'll quickly tell you. I had a couple family members that were couples, and they were going through some challenges, and they was having a little bit of disagreement, so they decided to go to the nearest park. And they're just they're just fussing at each other, and they're just talking about, what you did, you could have did this better, and they're just going on and on. And then they said, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they heard this little voice. And the voice started singing this song. And the song was, all you need is love. And they're looking around like, what's going on here? But they kept hearing this song, all you need is love. It was this little boy that had came up and kind of parked his bike next to them. They didn't even notice him. But he heard them going back at each other, back and forth, and he started singing this song. And I thought, so a child shall lead you. But so that's my whole point. It really is the love that we all have for children and for the family unit. It shines through in his work. So with that said, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, just one more minute on our overall conclusions. Parents respond to personal relationships. I think you can tell by the heart energy that Rose and Maisha bring to this, that this project and its success was based upon personal relationships. Nothing can substitute for that. I think a whole theme of this morning has been most fathers want to be involved in their children's lives. Some don't. We had some people just flat out refuse, but most did want to. That's part one. And part two is most fathers not only want to be involved, but will participate in a supportive program. There's a potential out there to work with fathers. Most mothers want involvement and support from fathers. I had far more mothers who complained to me about fathers not living up to their commitments in the parenting plan than I did have mothers who wanted to gatekeep and restrict fathers' access. They wanted more from the fathers, by and large. And as Rose was saying, even parents who are not on good terms can work together with a business relationship or based upon their shared concern and love for the child. And as we've been talking about throughout our presentation here, lower income parents do need supportive services as well as co-parenting support. The other thing was very clear to us, our community strongly supports this. We get a lot of help from everybody we asked for. We put this together, we had a big task force, a lot of people were involved. I've mentioned some of the various people here who helped us, so I think our community recognizes the significance of the work we're all doing. So thank you very much, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so we're going to have a time for question and answers, and I will remind people that if those of you in the room are too bashful to speak into the microphone, you can email us your questions at extcyfc@umn.edu. I'll have to wait until our speakers get back here to begin our Q&A, however. They needed a little break. So, Kathy, this question, pardon? Yes, Sharon, you can do a lot of things.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing all of your stories with us today. It sounds like a wonderful program. I have a question about recruitment, because you said that people weren't coerced in any way. Is that right, Judge Peterson? How did you recruit people for the program?
Because of the needs of a randomized control study, we picked out some of the high poverty zip codes in North Minneapolis, and simply every other, where's Mary? There was a 0 and 1 chart someplace, and one couple would go to the regular family court paternity calendar, and one would come to our court intake. So it was purely random. Well, they just didn't do it. You saw that 15% of people just kind of blew us off, so.
This question is for Kathy. Could you comment on the failure of people to use birth control? Why would girls or women get pregnant when they are struggling financially?
So this is the big question that is answered in Promises I Can Keep, and I don't want to distract from this event too much by answering that question, but I do want to say that nobody gets results like this from an intervention, especially the first time around. If you all aren't like jumping out of your seats right now, there's something wrong with you. This is amazing, totally amazing. All I'll say is that it's a complicated story, but I think if you read the book, one that you will resonate with, and you'll be able to answer that question at your Thanksgiving table when it just might come up. So I'll stop there.
This question is for Jamie. Why is it taking so long for the experts to start paying attention to the triad relationships, as reflected by Bruce's comment about child support?
How long do I have to answer? Elizabeth Vivas told me the last time I was in Switzerland, she said, you and I are going to die and nobody's going to get this. We've been at this for such a very, very long time. It's because of so many different reasons. I mean, the reality is, across the world, mothers are primary caregivers. They are, and that's a fact. And so this is just so indelibly taught to us from the time that we're little, and in the things that we see and the games that we play and the metaphors that we use. And then we go to school and then they teach us about attachment and dyadic models. And all of us come out of graduate programs and we've learned how to do child-parent psychotherapy and these great interventions with mothers. And then, oh yeah, and if dad's around, bring him in. But the reason I think people don't see 3 is that they've just been indoctrinated and taught to see 2. They've been indoctrinated to see moms, and dads are always there. But you would hope that at the end of an event like this, that if you went out and you carry this notion of a triangle with you, at least when you make the mistake, which all of you will again tomorrow, the next time you do this, of seeing the mother and the baby, you think, okay, and then there's a triangle too. Not instead of, but two. And if you're always thinking that, if that's like emblazoned on your blazer and you're doing that and you're teaching your colleagues to do that and you're teaching your students to do that, we'll maybe turn the corner on it. And if you don't, we won't. Louis Silverstein was at an event in Massachusetts with me back in 1998, and Louise refuses to be on doctoral dissertation committees of any project that doesn't involve a father. So if there's a project that it's just going to be a mother and child, she won't be on it. You know, it really has to be that level of change for us to make a difference. If we don't, we won't.
So I am an evaluator, and so I can't help but to ask this of all of our panelists. You come from all kind of different angles of this, but you have all been caring about this issue for a very long time. I'm just wondering what your takeaway, for each of you, what your takeaway is from your experience here today.
By intervening, I mean, this is a 12-hour intervention administered by caring people to really, really disadvantaged folks, okay? And I mean, you know, there's hardly anyone on the TANF system anymore. There are only 1 million adults in the whole United States. So, I mean, we're talking about really disadvantaged folks. You know, we should all leave here being incredibly hopeful. And in fact, maybe a little bit ashamed of ourselves for maybe wondering whether people can change and situations can improve. So that's my takeaway.
So I wish we could bottle what Rose said, because Rose said some of the things that I wished I could have had time to say if I'd have been there. This works because you care, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you do, you could do everything right. You could follow the curriculum manual. You could say every word, and if you don't care, people know if you care. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you know, kids know if their teachers love them or not, and if their teachers don't love them, then they're not going to give back in return. And that's like the take-home message for this is that the programs are there. So now we've heard about a possible array of different services, from primary prevention to secondary and tertiary prevention. And we know that there can be a suite of services available in any community for parents just starting out, to parents who are struggling a bit, to parents who are on the deep end and need those kinds of supports. So we don't need to do a whole lot more to sketch out what that would look like. Now we need to get people to care. And I mean, I'm not peace and love, brothers, let's all hold hands. But this is the reality of it, that programs that care succeed. And programs that go through the motions. Thank you. Go through the motions don't, because parents know, and dads will come back a second and a third time if you want them there. People talk about father engagement like it's a noun instead of a verb.
Right here. I guess for me, Judge Peterson has often called me the mother of the mothers, and sometimes I feel like I'm the co-parent of the ones who are co-parenting. But taking away, for me, you know, it's nothing like a parent calling me and saying, a father calling me and saying, Rose, I got a chance to see my son today, or I've gotten more time with my child. So for me, is that optimism that we spoke about earlier, and just having the desire for parents having a desire to want to be involved. You know, money can't buy love. Money can't buy time. And children don't remember things that you bought them. They remember the time that you spent with them. So for me, creating those memories with these parents is just so rewarding.
And I would just ditto what most have been said already, and I know Mary and Krista, Judge used to start our meetings with this. quote about the interventionist, and it's a shame I can't remember it word from word because he used to start every meeting with it. But that
The
it's
quality
basic.
of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener.
Every meeting, but that's what it is, because people know when you're just working, and people don't want to be a job. If you're just showing up to your job, people don't want to be a job. So just being there and being authentic and just being there because you care and not because you're just showing up to work. Because if you just show up to work, they'll just show up too, and nothing will get done.
So I have two takeaways. One is a reminder of how much fun and how exciting it was to work on a really good project with people like Rose and Maisha and the other people here who worked on this. To be a part of something like that is really very special. The second thing is, I mentioned earlier, I'm feeling a lot of synergy here today based upon the research that's been done, some of the interventions that are being based on that research. I feel like we know what the issues are. We're learning some about what to do with it. So I think we can move forward. We also know, very frankly, I've heard of some of the things that have been said about judges here and systems. We know, and this is inevitable with the evolution of society, that our systems and our institutions are not necessarily based upon the latest and best knowledge of how people work. And they're going to have to be changed, and they are. And there's a lot of big changes in our court system. You know, one of my current assignments is I manage a drug court and a court for homeless people and a court for women charged with prostitution. So and these are very supportive, caring courts like what you're hearing about here. So organizations and institutions will change, but they need to have the impetus of the research and the reformers to see where to go.
This question is for any of you. Once a student is school-aged, is there anything you recommend for schools to do to help kids of co-parents? When co-parenting, when it's not going well, students have difficulty focusing, display behavior concerns that staff are frustrated by because they can't fix the home situations. So what can they do?
The Henderson Hopkins School, right north of my house in Baltimore, Maryland, has really worked hard on this issue, and they make sure that every child has both a mother and a father on the child-parent contact list. And they have a father's group every week that meets at the school to talk about parenting issues. And they also invite intentionally fathers to participate in field trips and volunteer in the classroom. And it has had a remarkable effect on the dads, who almost never are kind of welcomed through the school door in that day-to-day volunteerism way, and on the kids. So simple thing, it's basically just changing the paradigm and schools thinking about that child as having two and not just one parent.
Anybody else care to comment on that?
I was just going to say a word about trauma-informed schools also. I mean, I think that a lot of the work that we've been doing, we do something called a trauma-informed co-parenting approach, because so often when you use the word trauma-informed, the subtext is that the trauma was caused by the father and the father is the trauma. And saying that at a meeting like this sounds almost like heresy, but the reality is that that's there, that's in the woodworks. When men show up in preschools, people say, well, who is he and what is he doing here? There's this whole ethic. I did it too. They hired a new cook at my daughter's preschool. And I walked in and was like, who is that guy? It's part of what we do. It's a knee-jerk kind of thing. So changing the culture of schools means not just helping them to understand a little bit more about the trials and tribulations the kids face so that they can be better co-parents at the schools, but also I think really changing the ethic of fathers in the way that Kathy was saying that they've done at the school that she knows about. And that's hard work, and you need good administrative leadership in order to be able to do that, I think.
Other questions, either online or in person?
I have a question for the co-parent court. I'm just curious, so the classes on co-parenting are gender-specific and separate. How do you facilitate the communication and just like the rapport building between that parent to get to that point of suddenly coming together to develop a legal court document for a parenting plan when they've been separate for 3 or 4 weeks.
Right. And depending on where the co-parents are at, it looks different, because sometimes parents are communicating through the workshop. They were communicating before they started, and they'll continue to. And we encourage them to what things to really focus on when they're communicating, and we try to really teach practical skills. And so sometimes it's like, so he has the daughter on Wednesday or Friday, so we have that discussion in group. So how is that conversation going to go? Should we role play? Parents who are highly conflicted, sometimes we encourage them not to speak, try not to speak, especially if they're pretty much disengaged or when they are communicating conflicted, is to wait until we can, have that mediation with the parenting plan. And sometimes it's a number of sessions for the parenting plan, and sometimes it's not even touching the parenting plan that first time they meet. Sometimes let's just talk about, you've been disengaged for a number of years, let's just start with something small. Let's just sit down and for an hour, not talk about the parenting plan, but just have a conversation about where each of you have been at. What are your needs? What do you both see in this? So it just really depends on where they're at and what their preferences and what they're comfortable doing. Because sometimes we do get fathers that, now we've done, by bringing them in there, they want that parenting right away. And so it's going back and say, no, these things take time. So we always use the baby step. And we always let them know that doing this doesn't automatically grant you parenting time. That may not come. There may be certain things that need to be addressed before we get the final hearing. It's not 4 workshops, week 5, parenting plan, week 6, parenting time. It depends on your situation.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to add one thing. Kathy pointed out that over half of fathers voluntarily sign paternity documents at the hospital. We were working with the people who did not, because the calendars we were building on were the calendars where the county was bringing in people to establish paternity. So we did have lots of people who had little, they didn't have enough of a relationship for the father to sign the document and had to be summoned to court. So people coming back from prison or that maybe they didn't know they were the father. So there really was a lot of individual work done depending upon where the parents were at in their ability to talk to each other.
And in addition to that, I also, let them know that we're not going at the pace of you as parents. We're going at the pace of the child. Is the child ready for you to come back into their lives right now? You can't always go on the base, on the pace of the parent, because like Maisha said, he may come in, haven't seen the child year or two, and you come jumping right back in can be traumatic to that child. So for me, it's more of what's the decision of the child? Are they ready? We have to take this at their. You may want 2 days out of a week. Well, your child doesn't want to see you for 2 days. Maybe they just want to see you for 1. So we're going to try that first, and we'll build off of that. Because I'd rather start here and build up than to start here and have to scale back down.
Any others?
Yeah, this will be a last one. I know that both Kathy and Jamie, you guys talked about changing the narrative or how we define caregivers and the family triad and whatnot. Beyond that, from all of the years that you've been kind of looking at this and doing this work, all of you, I guess, what do you think could happen either at systems level or policy level or funding level? I'm not sure what it is that could really move the needle in terms of child outcomes in co-parenting context or unmarried parents context.
So what's really striking about the body of evidence, is that everything from creating high-quality preschool education to reframing high school so that it's a deeply meaningful and engaging experience, to direct co-parenting interventions like the ones we've heard about now are important. They're vital. But I think the message we've missed is that families are malleable and they really respond to these investments throughout the life course. So Belle Sawhill has an excellent sort of a simulation about taking the point of view that if you invested, I mean, just in the institutions we have control over. We have control over preschool. We have control over high school, right? Just in the institutions that we have available to us. What if we invested in the way that we should be investing anyway? We could see these huge gains in terms of the kinds of families children will be living in. You know, I think now we've got an economy, right, that is so punishing to unskilled and minority workers. The degradation of work is something that's gotten a lot worse in the last 20 years. The bad jobs of yesterday were much, much better than the bad jobs of today. You know, in my work in Minneapolis, and of course the Father Project is one of the two programs in the PACT evaluation. The average income of the fathers in our program is $500 a month. $500 a month. What are we going to do about that? Right? So, you know, I think we have to both think small and think big at the same time. And we can't be asking people to do the impossible. So I would recommend Belle's simulation work to you, but she leaves out the economic piece, even though she's an economist. Can't quite figure that out. So add in that economic piece, and I think you could really do something spectacular. And both men and women, by the way, are affected by the degradation of work.
I know that Kathy has referred to books that are on sale here in McNamara. Those of you who are viewing this via live stream or ITV, we will be sending out a link today or tomorrow that will allow you to access a resource list. It will be books and articles that our two first speakers have written, so you can refer to that. I know if you go to Amazon.com, you can order the books. The article that Jamie had us print here, we could not get permission to send to people online, but I'm not sure, they might have to pay to get that. Is that correct?
Well, it's a 0 to 3 journal article, so 0 to 3 holds the copyright for that.
Right. Or if you could get it individually, I'm not sure.
Sure.
I know that there have been some comments that the slides that the speakers used today are different than the slides we sent out. This very often happens, and we anticipate this. We will send out the newer slides today or tomorrow. We'll also be sending everyone an evaluation. We ask you to please fill out the evaluation, and as soon as you do that, then for those of you who need it, you will get a certificate of attendance. It will also include board certification units for those who need those as well. What other questions do people have before we close? Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think I have anything near as wise to say as what you said, but I can tell you in my own state, some of the conversations that we have with legislators, the bottom line is it's not, return on investment is not the right word, because somebody got the clever idea, show me the spreadsheets. I want to see the spreadsheets. You're talking this return on, let me see, you know, so you have to really be careful about the terminology. Return on investment was Heckman's term. But I do think that there's a way of making a pitch, and it seems awful to say in a room that cares about kids and families like this, but that there is a financial benefit to doing the investment. And if you can pitch things in that way to folks who are looking at the bottom line and the dollar, and you can actually bring some data forward that show that children with whom you intervene during the pregnancy and then provide some wraparound during the first year that cost you this much money are much more likely to get these kinds of scores on their FCAT when they get into preschool, and then you're going to be spending less money on the juvenile justice and the incarceration. it's almost trite, but you've got to actually provide the data. I mean, this is the charge to us. Our legislator has invested in some of the programming that we're doing right now, but they certainly expect to see some differences in the preschool readiness rates. I guarantee you that a couple of years from now. And if they're not, then the defunding will loom large. And so I think that it's one thing to have the conceptual model. It's another thing to be able to implement the things and get the entire team on board. The entire team is like everybody in your county who gets it, and who buys in, and who understands it. But then I think if you are able to bring forward some of the data, and there are some dollar savings, then you're going to be able to have conversations that'll take you a few steps further in states like mine, where that's the bottom line. So that's my best answer.
I have a question for Maisha. Did I get this right, that you were saying you guys have gender-specific groups when they come in, but you always have a gender balance between the navigators? So when you're working with the men's group, you're the only woman in the group, is that right?
No, we do have a co-navigator team, so it would be me and the male co-navigator.
But you're the only woman in the
Yes, I'll be the
in
only
there.
woman, yes.
I'm just curious what that experience is like. Like, do you wind up having to be the spokesperson for all women, or
No,
what?
no, actually no. And like I said, and the reason for that was sometimes I would be able to give, from a female perspective, and it also helped that our disciplines. I'm a therapist. John's an educator, so our disciplines would play into that a little too. So we were kind of, I guess, a match made in heaven because we were able to do that. But I think having that, those two gender perspectives really helped the fathers out, and also by it coming from a woman and not the woman you had the baby with and you really don't like at this point was helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it works the other way. Yes, sir, it works the other way.
So with that, at what point did you bring the parents together? Was it like the last session to create the parenting plan?
In the workshops, they would not come together. The whole cohort
Okay.
would go through apart. They would come together either at the parenting plan if they chose to go that route, in mediation if they chose to go that route, or sometimes it wasn't until court that we saw the parents together. And again, it just depended on their existing relationship.
Any other questions, Hannah? Yes.
What do speakers think the legal default should be? You will share parenting unless safety issues, or if you can't agree on shared parenting, the judge will decide. States are divided on this.
I'm not quite sure I understood the question. Can you read it one more time, please?
So what should the legal default be? You will share parenting unless safety issues, or if you can't agree on shared parenting, the judge will decide.
So, Bruce, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in most states, we treat married and unmarried parents differently. We impose one default for married parents, which is that you will share parenting time and even custody unless proved otherwise, and we have another standard for unmarried parents. My proposition is that all parents should be treated equally, and this is especially important since married parents are disproportionately white and unmarried parents are disproportionately non-white.
This is a very contentious issue in Minnesota and in other states. There's been a lot of discussion at the legislature for the past 15 years about what the legal default should be. And I was just a member of a facilitated dialogue group that worked for 3 years. And last session, Minnesota passed unanimously a new set of best interest factors for the child. What's the best interest of the child? That had some much more wise and thoughtful language about the benefits that both parents bring to the child. So in Minnesota right now, there's not a legal default one way or another. In fact, the statute expressly says there's no presumption for or against joint custody. but there is a new set of criteria for judges that require the judge to take into account the benefits and detriments of the child having a relationship with both parents. Detriments if there's a safety issue.
And I just
So
want to say,
a lot of work has been done on it.
and this is like exactly where we are. I mean, this is where we are at this moment, in this point in time in American history, and thinking about this, because the answer isn't lobbing all of these guys back into their children's lives and making sure that they've got the same amount of, without any kind of support. And so that's one ridiculous extreme. And then the other ridiculous extreme is where we are, well, let's just excommunicate all of those dads because of a few bad guys out there. And somewhere in the middle is the place that you want to go to be able to provide that access, provide those rights, but provide it in a co-parenting frame so that you're providing that support for that mother and that father, whether they're residential, whether they like each other, whatever their circumstances are. I talked about a program that's probably going to work for pregnant families, maybe parents with kids under the age of 12 months, and probably not for parents who have kids who are 3, 5, 7 and are coming back into their kids' lives. You need another array of services for them, but the ambition is the same, to make sure that both hands know what the other's doing, so that the kid, whose best interests are what this is all about, has their best interests served. No child has best interests served by warring parents. And so really the co-parenting piece is the glue that's going to hold all this together, and we've got to keep our eyes on that prize.
So to follow up on that question, Dr. Eden, I'd be very curious, what do you think the standard should be for states' voluntary acknowledgement of paternity documents? What should happen when mom and dad voluntarily sign in the hospital that they're the legal parents? Should there be some kind of determination of parenting custody then?
Well, now I'm getting into deep water because I'm not a lawyer, right? But certainly only in 2 states in the nation are child support, it's really child support, right, and parenting time adjudicated together, Michigan and Texas. And there are, it's not necessarily working out as well as they had hoped because there's not a lot of enforcement. I mean, it's very different than, it's less evolved than what's really been happening in co-parent court. There are basic justice issues here, and there are probably basic civil rights issues here, so I don't see any reason to presume that the mother is going to be a better parent than the father. Maybe some of you disagree with me, but I think if we really, in order to get rid of the dyad, we actually have to get rid of that assumption. So the adjudication of parenting time is huge for dads, and I think as Jamie spoke of so eloquently, it's really in those first months, in those first years, when dads bond and see the first steps and hear the first words that the long-term relationship is formed. So maybe my view is a little bit extreme, but it is what it is.
Are there any other questions? Hannah? No? Okay, I am very, very grateful for this panel of presenters today. And I'm grateful for you as participants that you gave time for listening to these people. I hope it's been beneficial. Please respond to the survey evaluation and have a good day.